In the election of 1928, the Republicans are going to nominate Herbert Hoover. As Secretary of Commerce, Hoover was probably better known than the president. A self-made millionaire, the American dream. He totally believed in the American capitalistic system and welfare capitalism, and he ran on that prosperity. Hoover's opponent was the former governor of New York, Al Smith. Smith ran on a platform of the same thing as Hoover. There's no competition between the two. The only difference really was that Smith was a Catholic. A lot of people thought that if they elected Smith, the Pope would move to Washington, D.C. and would rule the country. People seriously thought about this. In any event, as we've seen, it's a complete victory by Hoover. In 1928, it looks like the prosperity is going to last forever. There's no war clouds on the horizon, and the chief architect of the prosperity in the 1920s is now president of the United States. Everything looked great. 4 years later, however, Hoover is going to be the subject of reduce and contempt, downright hatred. He's still the same man that he was back in 1928, but the problem was the economy collapses under his watch, right? And it pulls down the symbol of the era. By the time he leaves office, there's thousands of people living in packing crates called Hoovervilles. Unemployment reaches all-time highs, and people are sleeping in park benches covered in newspapers called Hoover blankets. People in Texas even ate armadillos, and they call them Hoover hogs. He's absolutely hated by the time he leaves office. The economic depression in the country was touched off by a stock market crash in the fall of 1929. Now, don't say that the stock market crash caused the Great Depression. For example, if you go to a building and you were to throw a match in the basement of that building and there's nothing there to ignite, well, guess what? The match was just going to peter out, right? Now, suppose you take that same basement and you pack it full of dynamite, and then you take a match and you throw it in there. What's going to happen? The building's going to explode, right? Well, the match is actually the stock market crash. Thus, the dynamite in the basement of the room was actually there before the stock market crash, right? During the 1920s, the stock market, where we buy and sell securities, stocks, and prices for the American stocks, generally were going up. And there are several animals on Wall Street. You got the bull market, and then you got the bear market, and then, of course, you got the lambs. You know, you and I, because we get fleeced. In the 1920s, it's going to be a wild bull market, rising prices. Prices are going up like crazy. For example, there's going to be a corporation called RCA that was selling, in 1928, was selling at $85 a share. By Labor Day of 1929, it was selling for $505 a share. A huge jump in terms of its value in less than 2 years. Now, why does it go up? Is it because RCA is suddenly making more whatever they made, or they found a new way to do it and their profitability is going up? No, it's pure speculative gains, right? It's going to be basically people buying stocks, buying RCA stocks, thus raising the prices, and eventually people are going to get this get rich quick mentality, right? And they're going to start buying more and more of that stock, rising the prices, right? It's similar to the 1990s with the dot-com industries. It's simply greed and bad judgment combined. Now, why was the stock market going up like this if it was only capital gains? Now, part of it is that get-rich-quick philosophy. You're going to have your shoes shined, and you hear about a quick increase in the price. So you go and you buy stock to get involved. So people with an overconcentration of income put their money in the stock market. Now, what if you don't have the money to get involved in the game? No problem. Borrow it, right? You have what's called buying on margin. So basically what you do is you buy stock on credit. Let's say you want to buy a stock that's $100, but you only have 10. What you could do in the 1920s was go to a stockbroker and give him your $10 bill. And he would get a loan for you for the remaining $90, in which he would get from a commercial bank. So now you were able to buy this stock with a very small percentage of your own money going into it. Now, when you borrow money, what do you need? You need collateral. Guess what you're going to use as collateral for that loan? The stock. So you're hoping that that stock goes up. Let's say the stock goes up from $100 to $200, right? Well, what do? You pay back the loan and the fees involved, but in the end, you've actually made a lot of money off a very small investment in terms of your own personal money. And if by some crazy chance the prices fall, all you really need to do is go to the broker, return the stock because that's the collateral, right? And thus you just wipe your hands off, and you only lost $10, right? In our theoretical example. Well, by 1929, $10 billion were loaned to people to buy stock on margin. So you could see how that would drive up the stock market. And where was all that money coming from? Commercial banks, ordinary banks. These banks were loaning people's life savings and checking accounts to market players to buy stocks. And stocks would go up at a crazy pace. Now, there's an old saying, what goes up must come down. And in the next video, we're going to talk about the crash.